Oh, here we are. Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone. Good morning.
Happy Friday.
It's Josiah.
Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. So we're here, your hosts for Elevate Your Energy Frequency. I'm here with my co-hosts, Aaron and Shanae, with our amazing guest, David Sanderscott. Apologies for the bit of the delay. We had a little technical snafus we were sorting through, and we're here. So yeah, happy Friday, you guys. Let me get right to it. I'm going to introduce our amazing speaker. So imagine having a dream, and your dream is to be the shortest supermodel, high fashion supermodel.
World's shortest high fashion model. There you go.
Shortest high fashion model. And you meditated your way to that dream. Like, it happened. It's unbelievable. And so that's what David Sanderscott did. David is a life and business coach, speaker, and author, and he's been helping people since then. I think that happened in 2001. He's been helping people since then realize their hopes and dreams by coaching them through business, meditation, mindset, healing, weight loss, and more. You name it. So here we are with David Sanderscott. Hi, David. Thank you for joining us.
Hi. Again, happy Friday. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And just to be clear, I wanted to start helping people in 1998. Then in 2001, after I accomplished that, then I really wanted to start helping people. And I did in a way, but it honestly took 15 years before I started doing it professionally, you know, just to clear that up and be clear about it. Okay, so is there a question you want to ask me, or should I start?
I actually do. We do have a question. My question specifically is, can you give us some background about this dream that you had to be the shortest?
Yeah, absolutely.
A high fashion model. And yeah, tell us about that. We're so fascinated.
Yeah, well, I was in college one day, and I went to the community college, but I was in a Michigan State fraternity, and a good friend looked at me and said, "Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, Dave." You know, and it hit me like a ton of bricks because he was right. Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way. I had no skills. I was drinking my life away. I had no direction. And so shortly after that, I moved back home. I moved back in with my parents, and this was 20 years ago. People didn't do that back then, right? It was none of my friends moved back in with their parents after they moved out for college. And so my first step was, you know, it's kind of embarrassing. Sometimes I leave this part out, but the only thing I knew is that women like to make out with me more when I had a six-pack. So that was the foundation for my success.
Of all the There you have it.
I love the motivation.
Yeah. And I don't know. I often tell this, and I was watching a Jenny Jones. If you remember the Jenny Jones show one day, I was watching it, and there was like these guys that came out with ripped abs, and I was like, I could do that. I think I'm going to do that. And so it took me 14 weeks. I lost 33 pounds of fat, and I gained 7 pounds of muscle. And literally within a year of that, you know, I don't say I was on the Jenny Jones show. I did 2 seasons, like 6 episodes. My weightlifting buddies came on. It was such a cool experience. So there's lots of magical and miraculous things that happened even leading up to this Vogue issue. But anyways, so after I lost the weight, I said, well, I imagine I can find a book on how to be successful. And I was lucky enough, the first book I found was Think and Grow Rich, the original unabridged version. And for anyone out there listening, the book has been watered down and quite honestly bastardized. You have to get the original unabridged version. The older version you can get, the better. It makes a difference. And that book told me I could do anything that I wanted so long as I believed in myself, made a decision, and meditated. That's what I took away after the first reading of the book anyways. And I started meditating, and I decided I would be the world's shortest high fashion model because it seemed like fun, and I was going to get to lift weights. And that's what I really wanted to do, maybe, was be an athlete. But lifting weights was my sport, you know. And so I just made that decision. I meditated, and then I short after that I moved to Los Angeles. And I remember, I don't always go into this detail, but so I lived at 332 Oxford in LA, which was there was a kind of a famous street where I grew up called Oxford. So I liked that. It was if you lived at 332 Oxford in Michigan, you were rich, kind of. You were at least wealthy, where I grew up. And this was not the case for this place. This was it was a house with like 8 or 9 bedrooms. And it used to be where the woman that lived there, Mrs. Spink, God rest her soul, she was awesome and amazing. She used to take care of people that were dying or old people. And then she got too old for that, so she started renting it to like actors and stuff. So I paid $350 a month. So even in like 2000, that was really, really cheap for rent in Los Angeles. And I set up this altar. It was Louise Hay that, Louise Hay, you can heal your life. She's like, you could find a place for not that cheap and just set it up for however you want. And that's what I did. And I created this altar, and I had the room came with this wicker meditation chair. Mm-hmm. And so I made the decision to meditate every morning and every night, for 30 minutes or more, an hour a day, every day that year. And I did that, and I committed to that. I was celibate, I was sober, and I really focused on a spiritual life. And I didn't really know what it was then, hence the celibacy, because that was like something that monks did or something, that you heard about. and I visualized every day at the end of the meditation being this high fashion model. Now, it wasn't really something I could see, right? I couldn't predict I was going to be in Vogue. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I really, so I wanted to be on the cover of Muscle Media or Men's Health. That would have been really cool too. I didn't get that, so I felt it. I felt what it would feel like to accomplish that goal, to does that make sense? I don't know how else to explain it. It was all about the feeling and the emotion that I felt in the visualization. It was a posture that I held in my mind, in my body, a way of being in the world, that this was happening. This already has happened. Yeah. And I remember I was working on a TV show the day, and I got a call from the agent about a Vogue audition. And it was kind of like 2 agencies were fighting over it, kind of, because I was... And whatever, I knew when I got that call, I knew then I was going to book it. I knew it. And the good thing is I had 3 weeks, so I could diet and I could work out and I could get in really good shape. I got to go to the Hotel Marmont and meet Helmut Newton and have a soda water with him in his hotel room. It was such an incredible experience that so few people in the modeling industry ever get to do, be in Vogue shot by Helmut Newton. I mean, he was a photographer for Vogue for 50 years, so lots of people got to do it, but nonetheless, not anybody 5'3". And so I guess I'm going to end it there. And then it was by the time the day came, by the time they called me and said I got the job, it was anticlimactic. I mean, it was I knew when I got the call for the audition that I was getting the job. I don't know how else to say it. I had high fashion pictures. I knew that I was going to get it, And the shoot, it turned out to be a really big success. And so I was in such great shape. Helmut, he wasn't going to do a body shot. That's not really his thing. But we ended up doing a body shot. But it was my back. Because I was the prop. It was the model was the big thing, kind of way, I mean, let's be honest. It's about the women, right? Mm-hmm. But that shot appeared in over 100 publications. It was on every morning talk show. It was I got to go... It came out and Vogue takes over LA for a month or for a week. I got to go to all these Vogue parties. I got gift bags with Swarovski's crystals in them. I mean, I got so many jobs, and I ended up ending my career at a $9,000 day rate. For a day rate, what you get paid. It was 6-hour days usually, but whatever. My last job was a $9,000 day rate for $6,000. So. I did the impossible through meditation, belief, and making the decision.
Wow. That's so awesome.
Yeah. Did that make sense?
Well, yeah. And I was reading just earlier today, and I've heard this before, but the brain doesn't know the difference. You don't know the difference between what's real and what's like you're imagining, right? So you can actually project these feelings. Like they say, a lot of successful people practice their acceptance speeches in advance, right? They've gone through it in their head and they've seen it and they've felt it and they feel those emotions. And I think that's a perfect example of how the power of meditation and the mind and manifestation works. So beautiful story. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, probably the best book in the world that I've read about that is Lance Armstrong. It's Not About the Bike. Now, the first 30 pages are kind of boring, but then it really gets exciting. And it's so clear. He raced the Tour de France in his head every single day while he was dying from cancer. It had to come true. It had to, because that's what he was creating. Because we create our reality with our thoughts and our emotions and our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I can go on. I mean, but I'm curious, is there another question or?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely, David. So then from there, what inspired you to move into the space of being a life coach and becoming a business coach and doing the work that you do now with your clients?
Yeah, so it was a really long process. You know, there's one person I met that is a coach, and she was like, she had all this pride about like, well, I couldn't be a coach until I got my life figured out. I'm like, well, that makes sense. I mean, I don't understand. Why wouldn't you? So, I mean, so much of it was throughout my life of always wanting to do this thing, wanting to coach, wanting to be a public speaker, wanting to help people in this way. I did it in bits and pieces along the way, but I had to grow into that person. Just like I had to grow into, it took 3 years to go from the decision to the actualization of the shortest high fashion model. So throughout this process, it was like, so at one point, the whole LA entertainment career, it ended. It was no longer inspiring to me. And so I said, I was like, I said, I'm done with this spiritual stuff. And so I started reading business book after business book after business book. You know, some of the most influential was Robert Kiyosaki, but I mean, you know, probably 100 different books on business and finance and creating wealth. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely one of the most influential, you know, it's great. And it's like what I started to realize is all these people that were talking about business success, they were actually saying the same things that were being said in the spiritual books. It's really one and the same. And so many business people that are successful, you know, they're extremely humble and they don't actually take credit for it. They give the credit to God or to luck or to something. And like, you know, I remember like people would complain sometimes like when sports athletes just thank Jesus for their championship, but that's what champions do. They don't take personal credit for it because they ultimately know it's not them. It's not the ego that made that happen. It's a higher power. It's the spiritual. So anyways, I was done with this spiritual stuff. I still meditated, but I was focused on making money. And I went to you guys ever do Toastmasters? You know, you get like discounted for saying So every time I hear myself say it's like, God darn it. But anyways, I was at a real estate investment seminar in Van Nuys. Sam, God, what's his name? I forget his last name. But anyways, it was a real popular investment club. And the speaker was like this hippie dude, not a hippie dude, surfer dude with long hair, I think, in a sports jacket. And he's going to talk about REITs, real estate investment trusts. So that's not super exciting to the group there as it is. And then before he goes into his talk, he's like, you know, let's get high on God. Let's have a meditation. And so we lead this meditation. He leads this meditation. And I was on, you know, I suffered with depression on, pretty poorly for 15 years. And I was at a low point. And he's saying, you know, you're not your personality. You're not how much money you make. You're not what you think you are. You're something else. And something clicked. You know, the realization of my realization had begun. I'd already had deeply profoundly life-changing spiritual states, but this was a whole nother level because I got it. Something clicked. And I literally stood up and said, can I come work for you? I'll clean your toilets. You know? And And I went up to him afterwards and he said, well, your next step is to come to this seminar I'm having this weekend. And, you know, I was broke. I was living in my friend's closet. I just filed bankruptcy. I was, like I said, I was at a low point in my life. And it was like $200. I'm like, oh, I don't have it. He's like, you see that? You asked the universe for what is next, and then you cut it off. And then you said no. And I said, whoa, I got it. And he like tried to explain it more. I'm like, no, I got it. I'll see you there. You know, I'll find a way to get there. And I guess I'm telling you that because in what I do for a living, I see so many people do this. They ask for the next step. They ask for the help. And then they're told what to do. And they say, no, I can't do that. And so I guess that's what I'm here to say is it's never going to be comfortable. It's always a leap of faith to go into something new, life-changing, all of those things. I guess I'm just taking a pause to tell people that. It's like, you know, don't say no to the universe. It's leading and guiding you. Say yes to it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's so powerful. Yeah, there's this beautiful saying I want to add on to that. Like one of my mentors has said, like, don't like press your edge, like push your edge, don't push your buttons. And this is exactly what you're talking about. Like, you know, people, sometimes it can get really uncomfortable, but take it in like little steps, but say yes to the universe, right? I love that.
Yeah. Say yes, absolutely. You know, another, Steve, maybe Mylene's watching. What's up, Mylene? One time Steve told me they got into a construction business. They were doing really well. And I mean, this is like 30 years ago. One of their friends said to him, you know, you just got lucky. You just fell into this. And he said, well, I did, but if I wasn't working on the edge of the cliff, I never would have fallen in. And I think that's a real good way to look at it. You know, you always want to be pushing yourself and to the edge. And so anyways, so this meditation changed my life. I joined his program. This man became my teacher for 11 years on and off. And I discovered that you can be a meditation teacher. Right. So now meditation's like this thing that's like hip and it's in TV and movies. And in 1998, I mean, my mom like came home one time and I was sitting on the couch in the dark and she yelled at me. What are you doing? What are you doing there? Why are you doing that? And it was like I kind of had to hide the meditation. It was like it wasn't something that everybody was doing. And let alone a teacher or like, and I never even understood why people would read a book on meditation. Like, why don't you just meditate? And so I found out you could be a meditation teacher, and that was very inspiring to me. Now, the requirements were 2 hours a day for 2 years on top of all these other things, attend a retreat, finish this course. There was all kinds of requirements. And so that was a little much for me at that time. But again, I set the goal. I made the decision right there that I was going to complete that task, complete those qualifications, and become a teacher. Now, throughout the years, I fell out. I didn't fall out with that teacher first. First, I fell into like a direct selling company and whatever. And I really got my training there for how to be a coach for, you know, it was something called Liberty League International. Some people might be embarrassed. I'm very proud of my time there. It was kind of a get rich quick scheme, people might have said, but it was legitimate to me. I saw tons of people making tons of money, and that's where I got to be mentored by millionaires. You know, where else are you going to get mentored by millionaires for free? So it was such a rewarding experience, and unfortunately, that led the end of that company. Shortly after I broke my foot in 5 places, I gained another 40 pounds. I stopped meditating. It was like I totally went to sleep, and I literally fell into the pits of hell. I mean, I've experienced hell. There's no doubt in my mind. That's where I was. I'm grateful every day I didn't end my life. What saved me was I went to AA in my early 20s, and it was like just one day at a time. And it was like when I Googled like how not to commit suicide, it was like I'm laughing at it maybe because it's a little uncomfortable, but it's best to make light of things in my experience too. And it said, just don't do it today. That was the advice. Just don't do it today. And that got me through it. That's what got me through it to a point I was in so much pain that I got on my knees and I surrendered my life to God. I gave up all desire for material wealth and worldly success. And it was real. I don't know how else to explain it. That teacher that I'd mentioned in 2006, I kind of stopped being his student because of the company. I just stopped. And so now I started again, and I started meditating 2 hours a day, and I haven't stopped since. And my whole life began to change. And I just asked, I surrendered. Like I said, I clearly was not doing it right. Even though I had all these wins, all these experiences, I clearly was not doing something right. And it was because, I talked to someone yesterday looking for a coach, in LA. And it's like, no matter how much money I made, no matter what level I got to, no matter what goal I accomplished, I was never happy, whole, and complete inside. Because I was always looking for something else external. So it was like, at this time, the goal was, all I want is peace. That's all I want. Because if you're at peace and you feel really good, which you do when you're connected to spirit, when you're connected to God, spirit, the divine, the love, whatever you want to use, when you're connected, life works and you feel good. And so it brought me to massage school, which is something I never thought I would do. But I said yes to it because that's where I was guided. And it made sense because I knew that I wanted to be a coach. It would be a way to, build relationships and the experience of getting clients and et cetera, et cetera. And so now during these next 2 years, going through massage school and the first year of building my massage practice, which also started coaching, it was hell. I mean, it was fun. It was good. But it's like, spiritual progress and healing and forgiveness. It's not unicorns and rainbows. It's intense. Okay. I would say I mostly felt good and stuff. I mean, it's not, but it was extremely challenging. It was extreme. Your ego is going to do everything it can to remain in control. It's going to do everything it can to, bring you back to what you know instead of something new, because that's what the ego likes to do. It's not to be the enemy. It's not to make it bad. It's the ego is an inheritance of our evolution. We needed the ego to determine, life-giving, life-threatening, right? And so it's not a bad thing, but you have to learn to master it, because so many people let their mind master them. But the mind makes a poor master, but an excellent servant. And so we have to learn to tell our mind what to do, what to think, and how to feel. And throughout that process, the ego is going to fight. And so what else happens, and this is just in case, because you need to know these things if this happens, anyone listening is going through a spiritual evolution or process, is, in yoga and in Hindu texts, it's called samsaras, which we might call our issues, right? And so when the spiritual energy awakens, it's like the fire pierces through the samsara. So in my mind, I was just going to bypass all my stuff. I wasn't going to have to deal with it. I was just going to skip right over it. But it's the opposite of what happens. It all comes to the surface for you to deal with. And so all of that happened. And I graduated massage school, which was incredibly challenging. I was having anxiety attacks in the classroom. Everyone thought I was weird. I didn't know what an anxiety attack was. I had one in a parking lot. I thought I was having a heart attack. And, I remember at the end of the school year, I told the teacher, I think I was having anxiety attacks. He was like, oh, yeah, you were. I wanted to punch him in the face, And then, why wouldn't you tell me? Why'd you make me out to be but anyways, it doesn't matter. But I started my own practice. And I started doing massage and Reiki and doing these things. And, when something's right, it kind of happens easy and effortlessly, right? It comes to you. So I again, like I mentioned, I had reconnected with that teacher, and he taught a spiritual life coaching course, a certification. So I said, well, I think that's the last thing I need. I know I don't really need a certification, but I think that it'll help give me a foundation. And so I was about 6 weeks into that class, and there was this woman. So I was in a storefront, right? A healing center. And there was a woman in the street who was clearly discombobulated and, looked a little lost. And she came in to the center and said, my husband's been cheating on me. He's been sleeping with women in our bed from Craigslist, blah, blah. And so And the other massage therapist in the room said, well, have you tried burning sage? And it just was like, oh God. I was like, this woman told you what was happening and you're telling her to burn her sage. And I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm a spiritual coach. I can help this woman. And so that was my first client. That was my first client, and it went great. Her husband ended up becoming my client, and that started my coaching career. And then I still wasn't fully okay. Okay, that person was paid me $250 for every 4 weeks, and I want to tell you, I thought I had hit the jackpot. I was like, I'm gonna get 20 or 30 people like that, and it's all
Way to celebrate.
I was a little naive back then, but anyways, and then I ended up leaving the center and getting my own space, and this is how the ego works. It talked me out of continuing to coaching because I was in this new space and the room wasn't big enough and I couldn't get both these chairs in. And so I stopped coaching again for another, probably a year and a half. And I learned cranial sacral therapy from Hugh Milne, which was great. If you've never done cranial sacral therapy, it's so helpful for healing and that meditative state. And then a client asked me to start coaching them. And so then it started again, and then it's been growing, and I've been learning and mastering my craft to the best of my ability since about 2014, and since 2016, it's been my main thing. And I've been a spiritual coach, a fitness coach, I just started meditating people in the beginning. They just sat across me and I meditated them. And now I've really been focusing on working with business owners, entrepreneurs, and even pre-entrepreneurs, because I'm not going to help you create spreadsheets. I know that's always what I use. Maybe I will, but not really. That's not my thing. It's the tools and techniques and mindset tricks and creating goal. I mean, how many life coaches don't have written goals? I mean, I don't know if you guys do. I'm not meaning to offend you or not, but it's like there's studies been done that 3% of people that have written goals outperform the 97 people that don't financially. It's like that was something my wrestling coach taught me in high school. Is we wrote down a goal for the season every year, and so just sort of. I might be getting off track here a little bit, but I help people grow into the people they want to become so they can get to the next level in their business or start that business. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an internal job. It's never an external thing, right? Because like what we learned in LA, no matter how much better my external circumstances came, there was still a hole I couldn't fill. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It wasn't until I learned to be happy within, and it doesn't even really matter what happens out there, right? It's like if you want to make $1 million, be filled with happiness, peace, and joy. Maybe you don't make the $1 million, you fall short, but you're filled with happiness, peace, and joy. I mean, isn't that what's really important in life? Wouldn't you rather have that than the money?
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful choice that everybody gets to make. And one thing that is really what I'm getting from what you're sharing, which is super powerful, you're such a wonderful voice, like for the masculine, divine masculine. We all have both within each other, but there are a lot of men actually that I feel are going on the spiritual path. I would love you to speak more on that and like your relationship with that and how that's looked for you as being someone who's on that path as a masculine.
Yeah. Well, let me just say what my grandpa used to say to all his kids. All you effing baby boomers, we ruled the men were in charge all throughout history, and you guys messed it all up. So I just have to give you some feedback that I grew up in a really sort of misogynistic environment, and I never once thought about masculine and feminine. It was never something that was really a part of my life or my thoughts. But I'm glad to hear you say that, because I've always kind of leaned more towards the metrosexual type, or at least people pigeonholed me in that sort of thing and being in touch with my feminine. But I can tell you the biggest benefit of being in my masculine in the spiritual practice is that it's direct. And men tend to like to get down to things and get to the problem and find the thing that gets the result. And so more than anything, I think that's what's helped me. I'm very grounded in what's practical, what works, what gets the results, what is going to solve the problem. And so this is a tough question for me. I'm doing my best here to work it out, but that's been the biggest benefit of that is like, I remember I was teaching a meditation class and this guy came and, he was dressed in like, I don't know what hippie yoga wear. And I was wearing jeans and a shirt. And he's like, "You're going to teach meditation wearing jeans?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." And he left and didn't come to class. He couldn't handle someone wearing jeans. So I think spirituality has nothing to do with makeup or clothes or going to Burning Man or putting that little thing on your head. It has nothing to do with that. It's like when you learn in mixed martial arts or Muay Thai is the guys that try and look like fighters. They're not fighters. And it's the people that try and look spiritual or, they usually aren't really spiritual. They're trying to play a role or fake themselves out. Like you don't have to dress different. You should live your life like the most spiritual people. They just live their life like normal people and you would never know that they're spiritual. I don't know if that makes sense or if that answers your question at all. But maybe you could help me again by reacting.
No, it's more just thanks for that. It's perfect. It was more an inspiration because I feel like a lot of males going through the spiritual path, because we all have both the divine feminine and the divine masculine. We need a combination and balance of both.
Absolutely.
To balanced and harmonic life. So I know that it's been my experience too, like in the spiritual world, it's a beautiful thing to see more males coming into their divine feminine. So it's really inspiring to see you coming into those gifts and sharing it with the people. So for the males listening in on this live, for example, it's like a really wonderful message that you're giving. So
thank you.
I would like to add something to Shanae's question. So David, for you, how would you define spirituality? Now, so spirituality is a very personal thing, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's religious. It can mean anything depending on the person. And so I'd love to hear for you, David, specifically, what spirituality means to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to try and answer it really easily. Being kind to all people at all times, under all circumstances, including yourself, without exception. Now maybe that's one spiritual rule, one spiritual tool to use and to practice. And there's others, but that's the simplest way to sort of, if you're going to track and measure your spiritual progress. How kind were you today? And to yourself is really important because we're often hardest on ourselves, right? But it's not like just meditating. Like just meditating doesn't make it spiritual. That just like going to church on Sunday it doesn't mean you're following Christianity or whatever, It's something that it's how you live your life. It's a lifestyle. It's constantly so. Throughout your day, right? So we're all coaches, we're all entrepreneurs, we're all doing things that scare us. Almost everybody who's a business owner at all phases of their business suffer imposter syndrome, right? Is that? Can you agree with that? At some point, you've had that. So that's a great thing because it's a real visceral feeling, right? It's like a visceral feeling. So it's like. What being spiritual is to me, like one of the keys is remaining the observer, being mindful, staying conscious, but you don't want to be the experiencer. The ego's always looking for the experience, it hates being bored, right? It wants to have experiences. You want to remain the observer. I always do this because this is always where I try and live my life from. Like up here, like looking down, observing. And so when you go throughout your day, and you have uncomfortable feelings. Like I bring up that imposter syndrome because we can all feel it. We can all feel it. So that's the work. That uncomfortable feeling, that's the thing that's stopping you from reaching your goal. Because you don't really believe it. Because you're not truly at peace with it. There's something there that's stopping you. Now, you don't have to like make this an intellectual process. It's not. You don't need to go into a story about it at all. You just need to feel the feeling. You just need to release it and let go. So it's like a contemplative state of being the observer, recognizing your thoughts and your feelings even more, because it's your feelings that sort of create your thoughts. Like one negative feeling can be connected to thousands, tens of thousands of negative thought forms. So if you can release the feeling, you can clear those thought forms. So it's like our work here, our spiritual work, why we're here, what our life purpose is. Some people get mad when I tell them what their life purpose is, but it's there to evolve spiritually. I mean, that's why we're here, to continue to evolve. And it's like our true self is like the sun. And the sun is always shining. Like right now, I live in the Northwest. There's no sign of the sun. It's cloudy. I mean, you can't even see the sky, but it's shining. The sun is shining, and it's shining equally on all. And your light, it's shining. It's always shining. You can't be anything that which you are. You are whole, complete. You are the love. You are the light. But we have all these clouds, right? We have all these things blocking our light from shining. So this being spiritual, I guess, doing spiritual work anyways, is clearing away those clouds so our light can shine bright.
Love that.
That's so beautiful, David. It's so beautiful when you talk about the feelings, how the feelings can be responsible for the thousands of thoughts that come out of your mind. I think that goes back to what you were talking about. When you were meditating, becoming the shortest high fashion model. You literally were meditating and the feeling of it. And so your thoughts started to develop from the feelings of that. And then eventually it became like your reality.
Yeah. And there was lots of actions taken too, obviously, right? Yeah.
Right.
You can't get there without that.
But you cleared the clouds, basically. With the meditating, you cleared the clouds, right?
Yeah. I can't give myself too much credit. I was so young that I didn't know any better either. This book told me I could do it. I believe it. I'm going to do it,
Well, we come from this space. When I say we, myself, Aaron, and Shanae, we come from the space that we are creators of our reality. So that was you, like, totally in charge and creating your reality.
Absolutely.
And thank you for that very inspired, very heartfelt, connected definition of what spirituality means to you. I think I personally resonated with all of that. I find all of that to be true from my experience in the way of being spiritual, quote unquote.
Yeah. I would love to ask you, David, to speak to someone who maybe, because when we feel emotions, that, like you said, we imagine these higher emotions of what we're going to feel like when we accomplish this, whatever our goal is, right? And that can actually help us bring that into reality. What would you say? Because a lot of people are struggling with fear right now.
Yeah.
So now they're in this energy of they're in this space of fear, and how can you speak to them about how they can break through that and just discover life being different when you're in that space of struggle? Sure,
absolutely. Part of me, I resisted it, speaking it, but it did come up, and now you're coming up again. It's like if you look at the mainstream world, the media, the whatever, everybody is telling you the opposite of everything what you need to do and to be happy and free and at peace. Okay, so it's like fear. Every fear that we have is a fear of a feeling. Now, I mean, I learned that from a teacher of mine, but I agree with it. It's absolutely right? It's all our fears, our fears of feelings. So, and the only way out of fear is through fear. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that fear comes up, right?
Right.
I posted a Yoda quote where it says, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate leads to the dark side. And when I Googled it, there is all these therapists debunking that. So they got to debunk Yoda? That should tell you something right there. Yeah. Fear is good. Fear is good. Fear is good. Like, yeah, the fear of the rattlesnake is good, okay? Yeah, it is. You're right. It's good to have a healthy sense of fear of some things, you know? I'm not jumping off 40-foot bridges anymore. I'm just not, you know? I don't think it would matter if I did, but that's not what Yoda's talking about, right? It's like, look at what's happening in our world. Clearly, fear leads to anger, leads to hate. You know, anybody looking can see that. So it's okay to have the fear. It's okay to have the feeling. And then, so the other part of it, let me just try and put this whole thing, is that the world is being so that if you offend somebody, you're guilty of something, right? There's been people sued because they made them feel something. Or, you know, everybody's so worried about offending someone. And it's like, look, if someone offends you, you should be grateful because they're giving you an opportunity to clear something out. Because often we don't feel. We do everything in our life that we can do not to feel, right? Whether it's drinking, sex, drugs, or even workaholic or shopping. We'll do anything to not feel. So if someone is triggering a feeling in you, instead of making that person the enemy, we should celebrate that person, you know, because they're giving you a gift. So again, it's like, what is that fear? And this is like an old exercise I'm sure everyone's heard of, but it's like, even with so what if you get sick? Well, I mean, I don't know, where does that go? Well, I might die. Well, I mean, we just got there in 2 steps. So what? You're gonna die. I mean, you're gonna die anyways. And I'm not trying to be. This might not be the best way to put that, you know. Maybe a better way to put it is, what if you quit your job and start your business? Well, what if the business doesn't work? Well, then what? Well, then how am I going to pay my rent? Well, then what? Well, then I might become homeless. Well, then what? Well, then I might die. So, but it all leads to fear of death. So if we can overcome that fear of death in the beginning, if we can just go to that one, and again, it's feeling it, it's like, it's recognizing that, you know, when you die, it's going to be better. it's the people you're leaving behind that are going to be hurt or you know, suffer. So overcoming that fear of death. But in general, it's going through your fears, not letting fear rule your life. You can't think. Your brain stops working when you're in fear.
Yeah.
And fear is lowering the vibration of our consciousness. Mass fear, you can't, you know, fear is negative. It's a downward thing, and we want to go up.
The downward spiral. We want to go up the spiral.
That's right. So you might have to ask this question again, because I've gone along, and I'll get a little bit more specific with it. But you know, what the question was, what actually to do with all this fear?
What would you say to someone who's really struggling right now?
I'd say it's all perfect. I'd say, I mean, that's the spiritual work, is being at peace with the way everything is. It's letting go of that need to have control, security, or approval. It's like, I remember there was like a nurse or something. She's like, "How dare you say not to be afraid?" And it's just like, it's so ironic. It's like, what do you mean? How does that help? You be cautious. Like it's like, I'm cautious not to step on the rattlesnake. Like where I hike, there's rattlesnakes, right? And so you hear it, and it is scary. And you know, and then you get over it, and you don't step on the rattlesnake. You know,
yeah.
And so it's like, why go towards things that make you be fearful and then keep inundating yourself with that? Go towards things. Positive input equals positive output. Negative output equals negative output. So there's never been a better time to take up your spiritual practice. Like, In one of my meditation classes this week, I said, trust your training. Like soldiers, they trust their training. They're still scared when they have to get into battle, but they trust their training. And so I was telling my, trust your spiritual training. Trust that you're able to be at peace and be okay with the way everything is. Everything's okay, even if it's not. So, I mean, those are just my programs, right? We can run whatever programs we want in our hardware. We're in control. So those are the programs I choose to run because they help me be at peace. And I encourage, if you need a program to run that's positive, is that everything's okay, even if it's not. Be at peace with the way everything is. Even if it doesn't seem right to you, because it's like the athlete or the really successful person who's humble enough to realize that they owe their success to spirit. It's like spirit. God's got everything under control. You're not in control, no matter what you think. So there's not a lot you can do about it except be at peace within yourself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I love that.
Absolutely, David. That's a great segue to wrap our interview here. So on that note, are there any parting words of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with?
Oh, geez. Well, I'll say this. Ultimately, everybody wants to help people and everybody wants to save the world. So my advice to you is save yourself. You are of the world, and the only way you can change the world is by changing yourself. So just focus on being the best version of yourself you can be, the most loving version, the most kindful version you can be. And that in itself will change the world more than any sort of do-gooderism or activism that you could possibly do.
Oh. Whew, that sent God bumps.
Yeah. That took my breath away. Wonderful. Thank you, David.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of your insight and for sharing such intimate details about your history, about your past and your journey. I think it's very, very, very inspiring for people. And thank you for opening up about your spirituality and sharing your process with the world. So it is a pleasure. You are a light. Thank you for the work that you do and the difference you're making in the world, David.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Where can our audience find you in the future if they'd like to get in touch?
Oh, yeah. So if you'd like to learn to earn profits from your passion, the 10 disruptive habits you need to break to ditch the 9-to-5 and create the business you've always dreamed of, you can go to profitsfrompassion.info. That's profitsfrompassion.info. And if you're more interested in learning about spirituality, I did write a book about meditation because, like I mentioned, I didn't understand. So I included 21 guided meditations in there because I want people to actually meditate, not read about it. And you can get that book at meditatewithdavid.com. If you'd like to schedule a time to speak with me, I'd be happy to give everybody a free strategy breakthrough session. And you can just go to schedulewithdavid.com. That's schedulewithdavid.com.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
This was so fun. I really appreciate this interview, and we're going to have another one next week.
Oh, great.
Yes, that's
what's
right.
up. Yeah.
That's right. Our big event, everyone. We have our monthly live stream virtual event. It's happening next week on Thursday, Friday, January 21st and 22nd, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific. David is one of our featured guests, and so we will see you there. We'll be streaming live here in the Facebook community and also through our YouTube channel.
Yep. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Stay tuned.
Happy Friday.
Bye. Happy Friday.
Bye.